Janam bibhrati bhuta vivacham Nana dharmanam prithvi yataukasam Sahasram dhara dravinasya meduham Dhruvaiva dhenur anapaspuranti. It is the compassionate mother of earth who bears the people of different ethnical and religious backgrounds, but still treating all of them as her sons on her lap, and who, the reservoir of all transcendental, opulential resources, may she be benevolent and munificent to me. This is a hymn of Atharva Veda, which gives clearly the picture of the globe. Nana dharmanam, the people who have religious and philosophical pluralism, and bahudha vivacham. Bahudha means of various ethnical backgrounds, and vivacham means of various linguistic barriers. So the people who are discriminated, who are put into disparity by ethnicity, religion and linguistics, they are all unified by the global citizenship or a cosmopolitanism, or the members of the global society, which we call now as global conscience, global consciousness, global fraternity, whatever you say. The seed of this great philosophy or the perspective of this new millennium has been preconceived or pre-propagated, promulgated emphatically by the Vedic wisdom. So with this prayer, we just define the topic, the political culture and philosophy. For each and everything, there must be a fundamental. There are three things which we used to say in analytical study. The fundamental, second is the processing, and third is the impact. So study of the fundamentals, then study about the processing of the fundamental units and the impact of the processed units in the surroundings. So we start with the basic idea of the principles of polity, politics and other consequential and supportive tools. First, you know that as an organism, we are a blended mixture of varieties of systems inside. We have number of pseudocellular, subcellular organisms, then grouped into cells and then into tissues and then into organs, blended into an organic system. It consists of multivarious functions and multivarious structural values, but still they are all confined to a common basic instinct for a common function. So these various parts of the body with various assembly and array, they group to form a common function. Likewise, the social system also consists of varieties of functions, varieties of needs which are controlled by a common system. So this physical system, it consists of a central nervous system which plans, projects and proceeds the natural neurosignal processing, NSP, by which each and every part of the body is activated. Just as a common body with uncommon and multiple way of execution structurally and functionally are totally taken into control by a central nervous system, like the domestic responsibility of a family head, it takes into control of all of his associates by a rule of contract or agreement, which may be a matrimonial agreement, and the physical thing is a biological agreement. Likewise, the society, that is the socio-psychical or the socio-physical or the socio-biological, whatever may be calling, these various things, inputs, they are taken into a common ground of understanding. Just as a body in physical instinct, just as a family with the instinct of affinity and association, the whole society is controlled by a central nervous system, the people who explore the resources, who distribute the resources, who enhance the standards of people and prevent them from the feelings of fear, of insecurity, inadequacy and the other consequential measures. That group is known as a political system, and that is known as polity, and that science is political science. Just as a body has a central nervous system, just as a family has a head, by the binding of agreement of biological and fraternity instincts, by means of the instinct, that instinct is known as the instinct of governance. And the formation of that instinct has different forms, which we are going to discuss in the political philosophy and culture. So, to be brief, precise and concise, a group or a particular team force that takes the responsibility of enhancement, elucidation of resources and resourceful in the society and surroundings, that is going to be a system, and system that deals with polity. And this system, it takes shelter into various forms. Just as the earlier system, they had four major groups. One is the dynastic monarchy, in which the Vedic wisdom or the mythological era that believed that there are blue-blooded personalities. Blue-blooded means they are born for ruling. They are royal. And those people, by the natural instinct, which is physically instilled by the process of creation, they were born to rule. And we used to hear the stories of such people from solar and lunar dynasties, the Surya and Chandra Vamsha, which is very much available in the Vedic and mythological treatises. So these people, they are known as instinctive rulers who are born for ruling. So they are known as paramparagatas. And these people, they can be classified that they are descended monarchs. And second thing is absolute monarch, and third things are constitutional monarchs. So these are the classifications, inner classifications, which we are going to see. So in the hierarchy, in the political history of the prehistoric period of the antediluvian Vedic, pre-Vedic and post-Vedic civilizations, they did have the system of this inheritance by this law of creation. Second type of people, they are known as amatyas, are the people, the intelligent people who govern the world, which is the modern technocracy. Technocracy is the modern principle. There is also one principle known as geniocracy, one system of political thought in which the genius people, those who are having immeasurable and immaculate and compassionate wisdom with a capable tool of execution, they are born to rule. That is known as geniocracy and technocracy. We shall explain it later. And the third thing is Sena Nayakas, who come under the rule of stratocracy and who gets this rule by means of military aggression or military progression in the positive and negative ways respectively. So it is stratocracy. And the fourth comes the democracy. The people are known as prajakamas. So the ancient school, the pillars of the ruling system, they have been classified as a quadrilateral system which consisted of the inherited and the intelligentsia or the galaxy of knowledge. Third is the stratocratic people, the military people who have the power of administration through military strategy, statistics and execution. And the last comes the prajakama, one who is desired by the subjects and who desires the subjects. And one who desires his subjects. He is known as prajakama. So this basic pillar, anybody coming to rule must be within these four pillars. So on the basis of develop the political culture and philosophy. First of all, I told that the group of governance, for example, you know the English word governess. Governess is a female who is taking care of the family, the children and the family movements as a supportive tool. Likewise, the people who are the mass power, agencies of power and agencies who bestow power on the ruling systems, they are having a parallel companionship with agencies of ruling, that is called the power agencies. These people are the power makers and this is a power agency, and they have a collateral and parallel assignment to go for the path of success in which there is all around peace, comfortability, convenience for the people for progress and prosperity and overall security. These are all the requisites of a perfect rule. So this governance is a process of taking care, and this care is concerned with knowledge as well as a discipline. So taking care, that requires lot of knowledge. If you want to take care of a small child, for that you know the child psychology and the appetite of the child, the digestion of the child, and the physical position of the child, you must understand several things. Likewise, if you are managing a mass, varieties of people with various social, moral, cultural, spiritual, economical standards, to simultaneously govern such a big flock of sheep, to adjust with their mentalities, even if they are mad, and to weep for their melancholies if they are sad, various this accustomation and acclimatization to the eco-sociological and socio-ecological surroundings, it is not a big job. So this is taken by the principle known as governance, and this is the process by which the political science came into existence. And this political science consists of innumerable, more than thousands of dimensions on various areas. I told that there is a basic fundamental, then there is a process, then the study of the impact of that science and process. So this political science, it has resulted in the formation of political administration. How to administer the political system? It deals with administration of one's own self-standard with the surroundings, administering the surrounds, acclimatizing his standards, and inter-party maintenance, and intra-party maintenance, and public contact maintenance, crisis management, policy control, risk reduction. It consists of thousands of sub-policies inside when we take into the political administration, for which the public administration system is a part. And second comes the political philosophy. You know that philosophy, that is knowledge. If we want to gain something, that must be gained by knowledge. That type of knowledge that is free from the human errors of anudaya, nescience, samshaya, suspicion, viparyaya, misapprehension, vismriti, oblivion, vipripsa, deception. So that type of knowledge which is immaculate, which is free from the consequential blunders of human errata, that knowledge must be gained by the superior sources of knowledgeable reservation. That is known as philosophy. You know from the word itself that Sophia Phila, that means thirst towards knowledge, love towards knowledge. So to gain the basic knowledge of any system is very much required. And second is the political discipline. What is discipline? The strictness and very much coherent towards the regulations and stipulations of the order, and also making other people to follow that order, that is said to be discipline. Discipline is a spontaneous inbuilt morale inside a perfect mind or intellectual mechanism which drives the person, also his associates and dependents, to go in that pathway without being aberrant. That is known as discipline. So we are going to study about two things. One is the discipline of political science. Second is the knowledge of discipline of political science. So the knowledge of political science gives you, it encompasses everything and empowers you to be a perfect tool of scientific wisdom, and the technical part of it is done by discipline. And third thing is studies about the riddles and puzzles of the contemporary political values, as well as the struggles and suffocations in executing the so-called discipline and the theories which we have mentioned. Whenever we are studying about the theories such as discipline or order or morale or anything, when practically it is executed in a controversial atmosphere, a few handful of people, knowledgeable, technocratic in nature, magnanimous, benevolent, this type of very handful of infinitesimal force which is inadequate to face the consequences before a macrocosmic atmosphere which is full of abnormities and irregularities, that gives you a lot of struggle and suffocation. To face that, we need one more practical dimension of study apart from these theoretical studies. That is known as existence. First, study of political science. Second is survival in political science. And third thing is sustainability in political science. Fourth part is success in political science. We can teach you only study here, but survival, sustainability and success, it is a program, not a program inside an AC room with lot of visual, audio, visual materials. It is personal subjection with lot of struggles, with lot of melancholies, with lot of surrender, sacrifice, and lot of other adjustments in which one has to enhance integrity and companionship with like-minded and right-minded spirits. So the study of knowledge of political science is political philosophy. The study of the discipline of political science is political culture. Culture, whatever we see by the performing arts, by the arts and other things that we see now, that is also a part of culture. That is a trace of culture. That is a taint of culture. That is a tint of culture. No doubt that shows our culture and heritage values. But culture is what we call discipline. A cultured person is said to be a disciplined person. A person who practices the rules without any compensation or compromise. The person whose knowledge is immeasurable and whose conviction is impregnable by any circumstantial coercion. The person who is not ready to be flexible, except to the flexibility to the agony of the people, the anguish of the innocent of the society, who is not ready to be flexible to any sort of embracery, bribery and other evil consequences and ugly heads of practical, philosophical, political systems. That person is really a disciplined person, and that person is a tool of political culture. And as I have rightly told, The study of this point is different from the survival, sustainability and success of the same thing in a controversial ecosystem of the contemporary political situation. That we have to discuss now. Sciences. The ancient system of the political rule, it was rather theocratic. They have been supported by the so-called Rajagurus. It was just as we have the cleric rule in the Islamic states, just as we do possess the papacy, either in shadow or in structure in most of the Christian communities, there were the existence of such clerical and sacerdotal influence and imminence in the practical political systems of the yesteryears and yester millenniums. And they have to obey the Rajagurus, who were great transcendental seers and knowledgeable personalities like Vasishta, Vyasa, Kanva. Those people are very elite people. On the basis of these multi-versatile dimensional persons, and by this perspicacious guidance of these clairvoyant personalities like Vyasa and Vasishta, who were political philosophers, social philosophers, spiritual philosophers, eschatologists, etymologists, cosmologists, cosmogonists, metaphysicians, and hypervalent personalities and tools for running the cosmic discipline and national structure and security, they were properly guided and they ruled. And taking this into account, you know that there are two things in the principle of creational error or creative error. That is, there are two principles. One is the wicked taking shelter into the concessions and indulgence of the virtuous and pious, and virtuous and pious being subjected to the trap meant for the malicious and wicked. These things are inevitable practical errors of the functional society. There are two inevitable errors of the functional society. One, if you give a concession to a virtuous and pious person, there will be a parasite, there will be a malicious parasite who will get the benefits. For example, you know that it is very practical and it is not a political statement if I say that the free electricity distributed is enjoyed and rejoiced by aristocratic and plutocratic personalities rather than the people who really deserve them. So it is the indulgence misplacement theory of the functional error. And second thing is trapping, victimization of the virtuous and pious inside the trap which is meant for the malicious personalities of the society. These things are the functional practical errors. And we used to see a lot of other people, innocent people trapped inside the systems meant for the wicked, and wicked people having the shelter into the indulgences and concessions meant for the pious and the noble people of the society. These things are practical errors. Likewise, in papacy or in clerical rule or so-called theocracy, it is quite known to all of you who are in the process of knowing about the governance system that despite the systems or forms of the government, the persons who make the government, there is nothing known as government. There is nothing known as government. Government is nothing but a group of people with a common basic instinct for a common commitment with a common ideology and methodology. That is known as government as per principle. So unless the persons, they are unpolluted, it is not in the name of the particular system of ruling which is going to bring benefit to the society. You know, even in dictatorship, despotism and dictatorship were said to be cruel, in which we have no freedom even to breathe. And somebody, they told in a story in the lecture that Pakistan, one dog was crossing the Indian border just to bark. One person told in a lecture that dog crossed the Pakistan border just to have the freedom of barking. Likewise, in this tyranny, the so-called tyranny in despotism and dictatorship, there is no freedom. But there is a group of dictatorship which is known as benevolent dictatorship, in which the person is a dictator, he commands, he has absolute authority and sovereignty, but this absolutism is utilized for the well-beingness. Such a person who is compassionate in mind, but very much strict and sovereign in his administrative system, such a person who is a bilateral companionship of the needs of the society is said to be a benevolent product for the welfare of the society at large. So he is said to be a benevolent dictator. So there may be a tyrant democrat as well as a benevolent dictator. So each and every system of government, they will have a prefix. Unless that prefix is understood by exposure and experience of the government, mere name and form of the government is not going to bring any benefit, or it cannot be defined with anything as per the norms of the systems of the government. So the political principle of philosophy as well as the culture, it was very much affected by various levels, and it has been classified into various periods, various temporal situations based on one, the classical age, second is the Islamic state or the Islamic age, and third thing is the medieval age, and fourth thing is the Enlightenment period, and fifth thing is now what we have, the industrialization and revolution area, where the two world wars they happen. Now what we are facing is the contemporary, and next we are going to face the political futurological studies by which we are going to make the new millennium or forthcoming millennium. These are all the various temporal classifications of study of these things. So the study of various political things are based on one, political administration, second, political psychology, political economy, political diplomacy, political geography, political history, and various these more than 100 subjects they distain the political atmosphere. And these have uncountable situations which are not told in the political books, but which are experienced while practically implementing the political war or the political vision. One is the political risk, second is the political violence, we face the political friction, there is the political potential, there is the political career of a person. So each and every step of the political science, it requires a separate subject, separate classification of various subjects to learn about each and every step. It is a lifetime process and project. The basis is given by education, the rest is given by exposure and experience. Experience in controversial grounds, experience in supportive grounds. There are two types of exposures. These are all the experiences in supportive grounds. Wherever you go to the world, wherever you go to global human rights defense at Netherlands, you may go to the parliaments of various countries, you may go and meet the diplomats of the various societies. There you will be given a red carpet welcome, your enthusiasm will be very much meritoriously considered because that is a supportive society. If you are to be absorbed into a controversial society where there are a group of parasites who are being fed and who have grown obese by the subservience, nescience and negligence of the society, that parasitical group which have grown obese by that, coming to understand that you people are like-minded people, or similar organizations or institutional products are going to hinder their further growth and development, they will resist with their maximum prowess so that you are not absorbed into the system. That is known as the controversial society, practical society, or the pragmatic atmosphere in which we are going to survive. So these various periods of political philosophy, we can have a strong base, and also about the discipline. Now we can come to the contemporary as per this schedule. 1. The earlier classical stage, it consisted of the studies of, number 1, the Greek philosophers and political giants whom we may know, the Plato and Aristotle, the Republic and the Politics. That were the first known treatises, apart from the treatises, the scriptures of the Vedas, apart from the mythological treatises like Srimad Ramayana's Ayodhya Kanda, like the Udyoga Parva of Mahabharata, Vidura Niti, Chanakya Niti, Vyasa Niti, and Arthashastra of Kautilya. Apart from this theocratic or mythocratic dissertation of treatises and its values, the Greek philosophers were the first political designers to find out the philosophical background of a ruler. They dealt with the state, the government, the ruler, the ruling system or forms of government. Then they dealt with the law to be enforced, law and the enforcement of law. Then they dealt with the society, the economy, the resources, military strategy and security. These are all the things dealt by them. And the system of, he recommended a philosopher, maybe a philosopher of his ages. He clearly told, unless a philosopher becomes a king, unless a philosopher, the very knowledgeable person who knows the stimuli of the brain of the people, who knows the pulse beat of the people, who can understand the heartbeat of the varieties, multitude and magnitude of the society, he deserves to be the ruler. So unless a person who is a philosopher becomes a king, or a king with proper prowess to administer the country is philosophized, that is, if the philosophical and political prowess coincide with each other, that is the only way to save the country and human race from the roots of evil penetration. That was his statement. So he looked for a philosopher come ruler, philosopher king, the saintly king, the successful king. That was his look. Likewise, the system, the earlier system, the classical system of our rule, our Indian system, it clearly depicted not only a philosopher rule, a ruler who is under the eternal vigilance of a philosophical watch, a ruler who is subjected to the transparency of a philosophical watch. So there were a group of people known as the Rajagurus, I have told, and these people, their political systems, orders and enactments are controlled by this group of people. So this was the first system. And you know about the legalist theory and the theory of Confucianism that was there in China at the time of this early classical age. Then came the Islamic age. Islamic age is, you know, that it is absolutely theocratic in nature. Everything, the laws are controlled by the Shariat principles, and Quran is said to be the verbatim order of the God, the ultimate reality, and any taboo, any provocation or encroachment, violation of that rule is said to be very much inexcusable as well as absolutely and effectively punishable, and that was the rule of the Islamic states. And even now, we used to have the same rule in most parts of the country where the judicial system or even the ruling system is subjected to the cleric supervision and control. That is the Islamic era. Then comes the medieval rule. The medieval rule, it was done by two major philosophers. We have to say there were a lot of philosophers, two major people we want to note down. That is Thomas Aquinas and the famous Nicholas Machiavelli, who made the Prince, the author of the Prince, the major political treatise, the major that is blunt, blind and brutal political treatise of the world, done by this Machiavelli. These two people, they were ruling the medieval period. Then came the intellectual enhancement, that is the Enlightenment period. Enlightenment period is the area where the real need of the society is taught. Now only the rulers have been taught in the previous eras. Now the rulers, their powers, separation of powers, distribution of power and policies, then balancing of powers between various systems of internal government management that have been taught earlier. So the earlier governments, they taught only about the rulers, not the subjects to be ruled, not about the care of the rule. In the Enlightenment area, the real thirst for promulgating the principle for the welfare of the subjects, understanding their instincts, feelings, sensations, emotions, that came into account. That is known as Enlightenment period. And there was the famous John Locke and Thomas Hobbes, said to be the Dvandvas, they are called to be the Dvandvas, the elite pair, that is known as elite pair. And they contributed to the psychological study of the society, psychological study of the instinct of the people, the common society. They asked two major questions. One is, what is the need of a government? And how they elect a government, how a government is formed, and why do they need it? And if they are forming a government, and if it is indispensable, which shall be the best form of government? Is it generalized or customized? Because medicine, you know that depending upon the person's resistance value, depending upon the person's disease intensity value, he is taken into the pathological survey, then a customized medicine is given to him as per his synergy, allergy and energetic levels. Likewise, is it required to establish a customized form of government or to generalize form of a government in which everybody gets the benefit? You might have read about panarchy. Panarchy is a system in which all political systems are meant for a common, peaceful coexistence and survival with cooperative and coordinative benefit. That is panarchy. So likewise, what is the thing that is required? And if it is required, which is the best form? This is taught by Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. This period is known as the Enlightenment period. There are lot of forms and lot of form suggestions have come. And you know about the forms: monarchy, the absolute and constitutional monarchy system; democracy, which deals with the principles of the people; the critocracy, in which the judicial system, it takes the major role; and the gerontocracy, it is the rule of the elite as well as the old citizens of the society, those who are mature by age, knowledge and conscience. That is gerontocracy. Then gynocracy is there, then plutocracy, aristocracy. Lot of these cracies are there, more than hundreds in number. And there are also some metaphorical crises are there, like what we have, if it is ruled by idiots, that is known as foolocracy. And if it is ruled by people, really no fools can rule. If the activities of the existing system are very much foolish, without any cogency and coherence to the standards and necessities of the public, that is often criticized as foolocracy. And if there is exorbitantly uncontrollable corruption and embracery and political trade, that is known as kleptocracy, the rule of thieves. So this, like in criticism, there were 1 or 50 or 60 systems not listed in the systems of government, but very much envisioned by practice by people who are subjected to the evil consequences and concomitances of the same. So these various forms of the government and the adaptation of this government by constitution and institutionalization and constitutionalization that came into existence in the Enlightenment period. Then came the revolutionary period or the industrialization period, where which the world wars and the Nazism and the materialism or communalism of Marx that came into existence. Now after the world war, after losing, see, when you can realize the value of shadow, whenever you are just roaming, sojourning under a red hot sun, then you will know and cry and crave for a shadow and shelter. Likewise, the peace, the moments and motivations and initiatives of the peace, they came into existence or they came into abundance as a result of their endless, untold miseries and tortures, tensions and threats they suffered and survived in the past era with the civil wars, cold wars, proxy wars, perpetual wars, then a lot of various other intra-social and extra-social aggressions they have met as a result of the bitter experiences, and having a craving for a better experience, they came into a peaceful survival. The world has now understood that they can only collectively survive. So it is not a union out of fraternity, it is a union out of necessity and compulsion. Now we have made a bondage. This bondage is not out due to fraternity or affection. It is the result of the previous infection, and it resulted in an unavoidable bondage. Unavoidable bondage in the form of relationship by which the Warsaw Pact has come for the Central and Eastern European states. Then the NATO agreement came, then the non-alignment movements, the lot of peace initiatives, Geneva Conventions, then various other biological, chemical, nuclear weapon non-proliferation and convention treaties. Lot of things came into existence because of their fear, not out of fraternity or friendship. Because out of fear, because out of insecurity, they have been compelled in the present contemporary world that they must coexist. But still, there is a clandestine system. You must have heard about in the modern science or in the political futurology, there is a new term known as New World Order. New World Order. New World Order, if you just hear as a New World Order, it is a satirical word. Just as in Sanskrit we used to say Mahavriksha. Mahavriksha, the name appears to be very glorious and it denotes a very filthy plant. Likewise, the New World Order, it signifies that there is something new is going to come for the upleveling of the society and benefit for the future. It is not so. The conspiracy by which major power blocks, by military perfection and by military professionalism, they plan, they are having some clandestine underroots by which they plan to rule the world. That is known as New World Era. But in spite of all of these above said treaties, conventions and the so-called apparent fraternity associations, there is some underground that is going on. Because it has not been practically, the systems, the forms of government or whatever that has been written in the scriptures or the treatises, that has not been practically made. Because of, there is a rule in physics, that is a major rule is there. That is physiosmosis is there in biology. In physical rule, there is known as push and pull hypothesis. Major push and pull hypothesis. And there is also one osmotic pressure which you used to study in various sciences, where the area of higher concentration and the area of lower concentration, they fuse with each other through a semi-permeable membrane. It is known as osmosis. So now we have an eco-osmotic system by which the area of higher concentration, that absorbs the area of lower concentration. And who are all dealing with peace? Peace is dealt by people who are already peaceful. And peace is dealt with people who are powerless or with limited powers, or not having hierarchical system of contact with the ruling agencies. So the real persons, for example, bribery must be prevented by people, oath must be taken, group must be formed by people who are taking bribery. Those who are nourished by bribery, how they can take an oath against bribery? It is just digging one's own grave. They won't do that. So to create a renaissance in the society, it requires, it is a work of decades. It is a work of thousands of people. Apart from this knowledge which you govern by the system of governance, apart from the knowledge which you are going to govern by a political philosophical understanding of the eco-psychological and socio-ecological nature of the people through a syllabus, subjecting yourself to that syllabus, and also following a principled way of existence as well as establishment of the society, you must learn the techniques as well as the tactics to preserve the values. Mere techniques, they won't survive in the society because we are surrounded by a tactical rim. So that is not taught in Mahabharata. You might have read in the Mahabharata war, apart from the techniques in missilology, war principle, war science, war strategy and other weapon understanding, tactics, lot of tactics were handled. You must have known from the story of Mahabharata more than Ramayana that lot of tactics like target acquisition, propaganda, reconnaissance. See, these are all very modern things. Propaganda is a psychological warfare in which the enemy is totally made to suffocate. The enemy he is shattered into pieces by taking into consideration his psychological weakness. So, an imbecile psychological area is identified by the enemy and it is shattered by a propaganda. What Krishna did with Ashwatthama Hatakunjara to Dronacharya is a propaganda. Now we are having the same propaganda in modern military intelligence, the propaganda, the renaissance, target understanding, target acquisition, target establishment, camp entrance, intrusion, spying, counter-spying, intelligence, counter-intelligence, mass intelligence, productive intelligence. All of these things are in modern military intelligence, which were handled by later people, which were already mentioned in our ancestral treatises. No, apart from these techniques which you are going to learn by your experience, you have to learn the tactics, how you are going to survive in this controversial atmosphere. You see, if a person is honest, there are possibilities for a person who is honest in the society amidst dishonest people. Either the person will be dethroned, he will be thrown away, the person may be transferred, the person may get a physical assault, he may get a monetary loss, and he may get a character assassination by falsification of cases and fallacious grounds. The person may even be brutally killed. And what is the security of these people? Unless you move to the common people. Unless a person, for example, you say, it is the understanding of the society which makes you the ruler. It is not your understanding about the people which is going to make you the ruler. The people must understand and love you. The people's level is like that. The people, they are not grown to such a level that they can understand the complexities. You know, the basic thing now I want to say, there are two people. One person is satisfying the public. Second person is really a beneficiary, that is a benefactor to the public. And who will gain the responsibility from the public? The satisfier, not the benefactor, because the system, the psychological system of the common society, that is CIQ we used to call. That is the common intelligent quotient or the social intelligent quotient. The social IQ of the people, it is very infinitesimally inadequate, so that they cannot understand. They want concessions, they want upgradations, they want increments, they want bonus, everything. And they don't think where these things come from. It is not the creation from abracadabra. From the existing resources, it must be properly shared. And one side of even growth is known as growth. Even development, there are two things. One is inflammation, second is growth. If a person's leg is big and all the other parts of the body is normal, then will you glorify it as a growth? It is an inflammation. A partial and uneven growth is a disease, and the even growth is said to be salutary for the society. So this type of satisfaction process, for example, it starts, how the hierarchy of corruption starts. For example, the people somehow, knowingly or unknowingly, fortunately or unfortunately, they have elected these people. Number one. Number two, they have to satisfy these people by indulgences, concessions, and they will not think about their duties, but they will call about their rights. They will not be ready for employment, but they will want concessions and indulgences and favors. If not, they will protest. If there is a protest against the people, then they just as the weapon of elocution, the weapon of oration, the weapon of pretension, these are the tools of politicians now. Now the people, just as they know also some tools to handle, they have now handled the tool of opposition for anything projecting oppositions in the media, and which will create the feeling of insecurity in the ruling party or the ruling person, by which he cannot sustain his power the next time, the next schedule. Then as the person's main intention is, there are three intentions and three projects for a person in power, not to serve people. Now, one, to get power. And as a consequence, to demolish or to deviate all the people who come in the pathway as a hindrance in the process of getting power, number one. Number two, whatever power I got, I want to sustain that power, one. Two. Third, I want to expand that power. So the person interested in procuring power, preservation of the power and expansion of the power, that becomes the goal of a person. If the person is continuously engaged, ahoratra, 24 hours, the person is engaged with the fear of his controversial elements, rivalries, dreams about the futurology, his personal futurology as well as the political futurology, career, always engaged in the process of maintaining the power, expanding the power and thinking about the enemies and the plans to destroy or to deviate the enemies from his pathway. This is a continuous thought process of a politician. If you go inside that particular area, if you subject yourself to that atmosphere, you will be also having something, because you are in now pre-power atmosphere. What is your area? Pre-power atmosphere. Pre-power atmosphere that recognize lot of values in the society, that can give lot of explanations, that can do lot of exploration, that can give lot of theories and justifications. If you get inside that tottering weather and climate of post-power, that is a post-power evaluation and subjection. If you get that post-power subjection, then you will be going to most probably repeat what those people they have done unavoidably. If you are not ready to see, either there is a selection between these two things. One, throne. Second is a principle. Either you can opt power or principle. Both cannot coexist in this society till you create an immunity. So, if you are aiming for power, you are mere policy makers, you can't do anything in the society. Now you are reading about policies and your wish or dream or imagination or even your fate, I don't know, it may be one among the rulers, or all can be rulers, or can be associative rulers, or can be monopolize the country even. We cannot just predict about people. Who can predict about Hitler when he was just distributing his messages in his own self-printed pamphlets by a bicycle, distributing the same thing into the streets and meeting each and every person of the commonalty society? Who would have dreamt that he is going to be the glorious dictator of Germany? We cannot predict anything. You may be going to be, or you can be, and I wish that you can be and you must be. And in that area of post-power possession, after possessing that power, you will not be having that type of time or that type of circumstantial favor to develop the power of immunity and resistance to that grounds. So you have to develop that resistance now itself by means of practice of either meditation or by medication or by mediation or by erudition or by compassion or by the radiation or by an external influence or an internal confluence. It is your duty. It is not a single day lecture or it is not a single day process. It is a regular process. It is a system. It is a system. We are a compartment inside a very big train which consists of hundreds of compartments. We are inside a process. We have our own predecessors and we will have our own successors. So we have to qualify ourselves with that power of immunity by which we can face this society. That is possible only by integrity. Go inside the society. Go inside the society, just as the political systems, how they existed, how they developed, how they flourished. It is by the power of their oration. More than by their execution, by pretension and oration, these major two tools, they have understood the feeble psychology of the minds and they try to brainwash or customize the common society to their things, and they have totally made the people impotent to think further or to reschedule their own power of thinking. So the people have been made, they have been pushed into certain vicious circles of nations by which they are totally neglected or totally they are made away from the pathway of creative thinking and possessive understanding of what is happening to them, and they are not being made to recognize that they are the reason for this enthronement. If something is happening in the society, the people are the most responsible people in this democratic country. They are not made known. They are, for example, for a vote, for a valuable vote, which destines the fate of the throne, the nation, they are ready to compromise for a small bucket, plastic bucket. So that is the value of their vote. So unless these people, you see, you must have parallel intelligence. If you are intelligent, see, likewise in effective communication, if you are having phone and your friend, he does not, how you can communicate with this person? Both must have tools of communication, both must have perfect inbuilt tools of communication like mouth or ear, and they must have instrumental support and its effectiveness. Then only they can have mutual communication efficaciously. Likewise, whatever you are developing is national intelligence or administrative intelligence or military intelligence. These things is in the power. These people, they are known as power agencies. Then the power makers, they must have one intelligence that is known as social intelligence. So unless you make the people, see, there are two options. Very simply I would say, the people, they are not made intelligent. They are idiotic in nature. They are very much emotional. Their sensations are exploited by the people to gain power. So these people, they are not allowed to grow intelligent. So intelligent people, unless they behave idiotic with these people, they cannot rule in this society. So there are two transformations possible. One, the intelligent people becoming idiot. The intelligent people becoming idiots, or coherent and relevant to that of the tune of the common society, they can survive. Otherwise, they have to tune the society, which is the project of 2 or 3 decades. They have to tune these people to their intelligence. Either there must be administrative idiocy or social intelligence. Otherwise, there is no principle, there is no policy, there is no practical pathway for getting power and rule. So, this culture, the disciplinic study and practice of the political system. Number 2, the philosophy, the absolute and immaculate knowledge about the political systems and ways of execution. They cannot survive in an area where there is political indecency. What is political indecency? Mispropaganda, misappropriation of media tools, booth capturing, horse trading, kidnapping, all of these things are practical there. So amidst political indecency, decent people with coat and tie may be decent outside, but a lot of indecencies are practiced with all of these people. And those people now, they are the tool makers. They are the tool makers, they are the power makers, they are the power agencies of the society. So where there is political indecency, decent people, they cannot survive. That's just, they are told in the Shastras, in the shelter of a pig, a cow cannot survive. And a swan cannot rejoice in a place where crows are. Likewise, where there is absolute indecency, discrimination and abnormity, there are only two options. One, the sanctifiers of politics. Politics consists of 4 major people. One is the area of victims. They are uncountable in number. There are more than 99 crores, 99 lakhs of victims of the society. Then the victimizers, the honorable, the excellencies. And third is the purifier, fourth is the sanctifier. So, the victims of the society, those who are the producers of the rich, but with a sacrificing tendency, those who ever remain poor, like a ladder. They see, the richest people, they are contributed by the poorest people of the society. So such a great sacrificing people of the society, who are the root cause for the plutocratic and aristocratic society, they remain ever. Those who indulge and induce the intelligence and clever and smart work of these political people, but remain always ignorant. Those who make power, but always impotent. So this is a type of a contrast circumstance in which the society is there. It creates rich, but remains poor. It creates smartness and cleverness in multitude, but it remains ignorant. It makes the power, but it is impotent. Is it a sacrifice? No, it is a scapegoat game in which these people's intentions are exploited. And each and every person, they are benefited. What is power agency? You see, power is a very dangerous spirit. Power is a very dangerous spirit. If a person has started loving power, now 3 things are there. If a person without control, if he is in interest of assuming power, he will do anything for power. You know that most of the traditions of the monarchy, you know that there was fratricide, matricide, fratricide, lot of things are there. Brutus, you know about the story of Brutus. immunity, political engineering, how to institutionalize your concepts and theories in the society, how to create the hierarchy, what is your action plan to the society. Very simple. There must be a leading spirit, the Nayaka, with the powers of absolute radiation, erudition and compassion. That Nayaka must create an intelligentsia, a group of people who can shower knowledge with compassion, who can approach the suburban and rural societies to enlighten them, who can be made recognized of their own foolishness, which has contributed to the development of some called antisocial agencies. That is intelligentsia. Then they can create Sena Nathas, the army commanders for propagation of social awareness and civilization. Then those people, they recruit a lot of people from the society whose people are known as the Sainya, that is the battalion of people from the society who are committed with dedication and sacrifice for the welfare of the people. These battalion people, they create Suprajas, good citizens. And this hierarchy of making a leader, a galaxy of intelligentsia, knowledgeable people, and having a commander of social awareness campaigns, then soldiers for social awareness campaigns, and creating good citizens. This good citizens forum that will take care of the other people, the ignorant, the nescient, incorrigible members of the society, that will take care. Directly approaching to 100 crores of the people, it is not an easy job. That which has been immoralized and immobilized by British invasion, Mughal invasion, lack of integrity within these people of more than 500, 600 princely states, which has now integrated to a common Bharat. It is very easy for us to interpret and discuss things inside a closed auditorium. Inside an open exposure, it is very difficult to meet these people who have been tamed and trained with compulsory or voluntary ignorance. That is known as voluntary ignorance. Yes, I want to be ignorant. It is a challenge. Let me see how you are going to correct me or rectify me. This is the position of the people. It is known as voluntary ignorance. It is known as voluntary violence. It is known as voluntary idiocy. See, if they are not, they are knowing everything. You see, if it is amnesia, if there is amnesia, then the person who is subjected to amnesia, he will forget everything. If the person remembers everything, wife, children and everything, but forgets only the money lender, that partial or selective amnesia, how it can be justified? The society knows these people, they are not ignorant. They are only having a proposed ignorance or voluntary ignorance. They want to be ignorant. So that type of dogmatism, that type of deep-rooted, abysmal dogmatism must be totally extirpated by the process of approaching them, not asking them to come to us. Political people, they established their mechanism by approach, by campaign, by camps. They approached, they pretended, they bent before them, and they stood like this in the throne. So it is approach. But the knowledgeable people, you see, technocracy is the rule of knowledgeable people. But knowledgeable people, they cannot be recognized by the society. Because there is a difference between satisfaction and benefit, I told already. If you satisfy the public, you will get vote. Because that is vote bank policy. So if you want to benefit them, you will not be put inside the throne, and there will be the accession of the throne by a consecutive person who is going to satisfy them. If you are not ready to satisfy them, if you are just willing to become a benefactor, absolutely by principle, you will be thrown out by the next schedule. Because it is the power of the people, I used to say, to throne, enthrone, dethrone and rethrone the people. If you are not satisfying them, you will be thrown out, then one more satisfied will be placed. So it is becoming a perpetual war against immoral and abnormality in the society. So people, what they think, oh, anyhow I am going to be thrown out. Somebody else will do that. Let me be the somebody. Let me do that. So if a mill is to be closed, if there is an organization, I will tell a small example. There is an organization that is running in loss, and that loss directly consumes the tax that we collect from the people. Because any loss where will they give from pockets or from their maternal, paternal properties or from the wife's properties? It is going to be executed or it is going to be absorbed from the public wealth, common wealth. So what a technocratic decision will be taken to close the mill as it is non-productive or running in loss. So that is on the basis of the economic values or practical values. These are justified by the principles of practicality. It is benefiting the people. Then immediately the people will be unemployed. But alternative measures can be made. But they are not having that much of intelligence to make alternative arrangements for people. So without that, these people will protest. and that will be a good message or a banquet for the opponent parties to take it as an issue against the ruling party, and that will pave the pathway for the person's dethronement ceremony. So what they will do, taking into human sensations and emotions, illogically, immethodologically, they have to open the mill and run it in laws. That is the reason for the economic flaw of the country. So by education, by ethical foundation, by approach inside the society with like-mindedness, compassion and homogeneity. When Ayodhya was ruled by Dasharatha, Dasharatha was an able ruler and he is a benevolent dictator, as I have rightly told. But Dasharatha, when he is saying that he is going to be dethroned on the occasion of the accession of Rama, everybody clapped their hands. Then he was very much stunned and he was worried also. So my departure from the throne administration is very much welcomed by the society. So it proves that I was a tyrant ruler or I was an incapable ruler. There was something inadequate inside me. So he wanted to ask from the praja, the subjects themselves. So he asked, what is the problem with my rule? Do you face any inadequacy, inconvenience or anything immoral? Then they told that you are great, but we are very much moved by the Kalyana Gunas, the auspicious qualities of Rama, not by the dethronement of you, but the enthronement of Rama, we are very much jubilant. And he was just asking, I am also just giving you a lot of grievance relief and then risk reduction and rescue from out of your problems. So I am also wholeheartedly serving you with my power. And what is the special quality with Rama which has made you to even celebrate my dethronement ceremony? Then they told, Vyasaneshu manushyanam brisham bhavati dukkitaha utsaveshu cha sarveshu piteva paritushyati. Oh Dasharatha, your son Rama, whenever we are getting any jubilant grounds, whenever we are very happy, he is happier than us, even more than our father. And whenever we suffer, he cries for us and relieves us from the melancholy more than what we serve and survive. So more than us, he feels for us at the time of our distress, at the time of our jubilance, at the time of our happiness, eudaimonia, joy, exultation. He is more happier than our father. So that type of empathetic attempt and homogeneity, characteristic, functional and structural personal identity of Rama has moved me. So that much of identity with the society you must make so that you can be a good ruler. And that is not taught in the treatises. That cannot be showed through audio-visual equipments. You must create empathy, wherein by you can cry for those people, those who cry, and those who can be happy about the position of the people. Make them happy and release them from sorrow. Move them with utmost, not pretentious intimacy, genuine intimacy, wholehearted, altruistic and cosmopolitan intimacy, which needs character molding, character building. With this character management, that is political character management studies, number 1. Political immunity against the anti-elements, number 2. These 2 courses you have to study from today itself. And I hope and I wish and bless you to become the fortunate rulers of the future, making me also a capable subject of your rule and sovereignty to enjoy and to envision peace and prosperity everywhere. Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. This type of atmosphere, we are good orators, but still our oration will be more turbulent and torrential if we sit in the floor and without these lights and videos, these things are appearing as if I am in an alien planet. Extremely, there will be a dawn for it. Certainly it is going to come. As per what we see now, I have already told, even though fraternity, see, you may not be friendly with your neighbor. If there is a theft problem, if there is a problem of robbery, if there is a problem of any other common thing that exists in the society or in the street, you may see that voluntarily the person may be asking for your support. Even if you are hostile between each other, when there is a common problem, because problem or feeling of insecurity, that creates a bondage. That is a coercive bondage. So at least I think that only a reasonable number of the society can get the fraternal bondage. But this coercive bondage, everybody must come. That is known as CBI. That is not the Bureau of Investigation, Central Bureau of Investigation. There is a common binding instinct. In a bus, there are 50 people traveling. They are traveling in the same bus. That does not mean that they have the same plans. But if the bus is subjected to an accident or if it is fire, then all the persons will be unanimously thinking of the escapism. That is known as common binding instinct. If everybody realizes that they are affected by bribery, by an informal and useless political system, if that sleeping, what we call somnolent, what we call latent, what we call kinetic, if the kinetic spirit of the people, they are made potential, somnolent made vigilant, the impotent made turbulent, that spirit, awakening of the spirit inside the mind, that they are fooled, that they are exploited, that common binding instinct that we must get from the society, but the government or the major ruling agencies will try their level best that such instinct cannot be produced, because that will extinguish their obese survival and their richness. So it can be done, because that is the rule of a nature, that if it goes extreme, that is what we call eschatological principle, by which we used to say that Karl Marx, he stated, there are a lot of wars going on. All these wars will result in a final war. All these wars will result in a final war. In the final conflict, there will be a final damage that will give us the rise of a proletariat, that is a communist. They will form a communist government at a last, and there will be no more war against that. And in eschatological religious, that is a theistic principle also. In Christianity, there was Armageddon. In Christians, they used to say it as Armageddon, in which there will be war between the worlds, between Satan and the divine forces, and all the satanic elements will be totally destroyed, and there will be the rising of Messiah. And in our Sampradaya, in our treatises, in our theism, we used to say that at the extreme level of abnormity, then Kalki, the god Kalki, mounted on a white horse with a sword, will fight against the biological, chemical and nuclear weapons and going to restore peace in the society. So everybody, both religious people and political prophets, on the basis of, I told about the science known as political futurology, studying about the future of political situations on the basis of past records and present deviations, they all predict that there is going to be a change, ultimate change in the society due to either compulsion or intention. Let us hope for that, and each and everybody must play a role inside that. I have clearly told you, approach the society with compassion. I told the character of Rama, that must be your first preface, that must be the prologue. That must be the prologue for your political career. That must be the preface for your political record. That must be the preamble for your political success.
So how far is teleology of practical science? Teleology of practical science. How far is teleology of practical science?
See, teleology and etiology, both these sciences, they deal with the causative factor and purpose. Teleology studies, teleology is a science, teleo means purpose. The suffix ology, it means knowledge, and teleo, it defines purpose and design. What is the design and what is the purpose for which it has been made? That is known as teleology. And you have forgotten to ask about one more thing, etiology. That is the cause. Why it has been made is etiology, and for what purpose? Which has made it is known as etiology. For what purpose it has been made as teleology. What do you want to know about from teleology?
So how far is it practical in today's world?
Teleology is study of the purpose of a thing. It is ever practical. For example, you see, what is the teleology of this mic? What is the teleology of this mic? Yes, to amplify my sound through an amplifier. To accept my sound, to amplify my sound and access my sound in the surroundings. That is the purpose. That is the teleology. That is ever practical. Understanding the purpose and making it purposeful for our lives is practical philosophy. Teleology is ever existing science, and there is no practical form of teleology, because teleology itself is understood by practice. What is the purpose? So in these things, for example, there is a small point in his question also. It has a definite purpose. There is no possibility for deviation. For example, it is a mic, and you cannot grind wheat flour in this, because it has a specific purpose. That is known as a distinct purpose or definite purpose. So there is no possibility for this mechanism to function some other mechanisms unless it is having any Bluetooth intervention. It is having a definite functionary system. But whatever he has told, it is also correct in one sense that if there is a mechanism like grinder, mixie and AC, fan, etc., they have definite purpose, and there is no possibility of deviation from the purpose. In theology, that is what we call professional ethics, in medical science, in engineering, in inventions, modern science and technology, everything there is a definite purpose. But whether the definite purpose has been achieved or not, that's what I told. I was addressing a conference before 4 days, War Against a Warless World, a Pragmatic Outlook at Delhi. I told a very simple thing which I want to repeat here. Before 1000 years, while they want to totally demolish the enemy camps, they used to throw the dead bodies of plague affected soldiers inside the camps, so that plague is spread and it will result in a mass colossal holocaust. Could you understand this? They used to throw the dead bodies of the plague affected soldiers into the enemy camps, due to which there is a colossal loss of lives in the energy camp. The same thing now in the advancement of science, instead of throwing dead bodies, they are taking the pathogens from the plague causing germs and they are creating biological explosives, putting it into the seal very technically, systematically, scientifically, and they are throwing the same thing, they are utilizing the same thing in the society. And the methodology of utilizing that plague germ or the pathogen differs, but the intention to use and the cruelty to assemble something for the mass destruction, has it changed? So, teleology is conceptive. What he said is in one angle correct. All these things, as they are insentient, non-living beings, they have been blessed with ignorance. As we have been cursed with knowledge, that knowledge, while occupied by negative measures, it makes us to be crooked in mentality, brutal in hearts, with petrified brains and hearts. We used to execute and exercise something for mass destruction without having even targeted hostility. Mass, universal hostility. So, this can be managed, practical thing can be managed by two things. One, if the people are corrigible, we can approach them by the tool of knowledge by which they can be realized. But if the fellows are incorrigible, see for example, how you can enter inside the forest where Ulfa camps are there and give Bible or Bhagavad Gita and give some explanation for them so that they can be channelized or they can be counseled. Is it possible? It is impossible. So, there are so many tools of negotiation. One is the tool of the speech, arbitration or negotiation or counseling. And second is an aggressive tool like a gun. So, whether we are going with a progressive tool or an aggressive tool depends upon the corrigibility nature of the people. So, the government must balance, or any ruling agency must balance between aggressive methodologies to control the incorrigible and progressive methodologies to prevent the future budding generations to get into the ugly heads of disruptivism, rowdyism and terrorism. So, they have to control the already existing unwanted social elements, that is antisocial elements. They have to control the existing people, and if they are aggressive, it is our duty to uproot, and simultaneously there is a what we call prevention and cure. There are a lot of people, you must know, just now in geology, they have identified some areas known as earthquake prone zones. How they are identified? On the basis of the geological and geodynamical mass apprehension, by which these areas, as they are having loose mass or loose bondage, loose geovalent bondages inside, if there is a pressure, which there is a pressure inside, those areas can be easily affected by an earthquake and have mass explosions resulting in lot of life loss. So, these type of earthquake prone things are identified by geology. Likewise, by psychology, we can understand those who are terrorism prone, those who are misguided, those who are totally unguided, those who are just sitting idle and inert, those who are in the areas which are proximate to the terrorism and disruptivism, and those people who are totally having no productive work, the people with poverty, the people who have been deceived by the social systems, the people, those who have been victimized by the social evils, those people in the pretext of taking a revenge, in the context of taking some service, in the pretext of religious or ethnical or group chauvinism, these people can be easily affected by the principles and policies. For money, for value, or for valueless brain and brutal chauvinism, on the basis of these various things, they are very much accident prone to be the prospective terrorists of the future. We have to prevent them also. So, preventive terrorism control and counter terrorism by aggressive weapons and military technologies, as well as approaching the corrigible societies by the process of enlightenment, that is a mass way by which the so-called etiology can be justified as well as the teleology can be achieved.
Swamiji, divine knowledge and devotion, can it help political culture and political players?
Why not? A person, for example, if a male person is going to rule a place, it does not mean that he will do injustice to women, and vice versa. If a religious person of a particular sect who is very broad-minded and very one, if he is going to rule, a really analytical as well as a realized person, he will encompass and embrace all sects. He will shower love on all people. So it is the analytical perfection and the precision of realization of a person which makes a good rule. So even though we can say that the society is a medley of various religious beliefs, there is a feeling of insecurity if a religious person occupies the throne or power. There is an automatic, that is an autogenetic insecurity inside the minds of the people that he may cause some harm, or he may somehow he may promote his own sect, or he may be against us, he may cause injustice. That is a common belief of the society, common belief of insecurity of the society. We have to remove it by practical performance, that we can still do something for the society in spite of our religious demarcations. A person having a religious belief, he need not have a religious belief. That does not mean that he should not have a religious belief. A real person, see, religion is also a tool. Whether it is a tool of killing inside the hands of a robber, or a surgical weapon inside the hands of an efficient, what the surgeon does and what the thief does. The thief removes the essential parts of the body, and the surgeon removes the unwanted parts of the pernicious parts of the body. So, if the same power is with not a religious person, if you say, I have already told, you prefix each and every term. You qualify each and every term. Which is qualification? Just mentioning a term such as religion, politics, people, king, ruler. See, there are varieties of people inside that category. If you go to a medical shop and ask, I want a medicine, then ask, what is your disease, what is your medicine? You want some specification. If you say about religion, then specify that person. Now don't specify the religion, specify the mentality of the person. If the person, irrespective of his religious pluralism or religious adoption, if the person is very much all encompassing and all embracing, compassionate, realistic and pragmatic, such a person can embrace anything. Even if an atheist, if he is having these qualities, he can be welcomed, he is admirable. So it is an additive. If a person believes God, a cosmic spirit. See, for example, if there is a microscope, if there is a telescope, if it is a macroscope, ontoscope, abiscope, ultrascope, periscopes are there. If there is a tool for magnifying some vision or for producing a special type of vision, that is an additive to your already existing eyes. But what is the use of these tools for a person who is having the pair of the natural inbuilt mechanism being affected by imperfection? So, whatever may be the tool, whether it is a divine grace, or it is a knowledge, or it is a compassion of a person, or it is a democratic favorable way from the society, or by his military power, whatever it may be, unless he has the compassion and justice, the two eyes, the major tools of his optical instruction, whatever the other tool is there, it is not going to do anything, because that is an additive, that is a magnifier, that is a supportive mechanism. You follow that? So even if an atheist, but well existent, realistic and practical and compassionate, he can do. But there must be a saying, as a person is affixing himself with a cosmic spirit. For example, there is a cosmic spirit, there is a main reservoir. We are having limited knowledge, we are having limited power, we are having limited execution. If a honest person associates himself with an unlimited reservoir of power, unlimited reservoir of knowledge, unlimited reservoir of compassion, he is getting charged and he can do more wonders in the society than a normal person, provided he has his basic tools perfect, precise and applicable for the salubrity of the society. You have to satisfy people. I told you have to satisfy people, otherwise you will be thrown out. Equality can be bought. Equality can be enhanced by means of equality of opportunities and equalities in development. Equalities in opportunities and development need not be reserved. It is not by a compulsory reservation. It is by making them fully qualified. That qualification, you see, that creates two things. One, insecurity in the unreserved, and some sort of perfunctory approach towards the society from the reserved people, as they are very much confined and conformed with their reservations. That creates some sort of prevaricatedness inside them, and the basic touchstone in the society, that is performance skill, dexterity, these things are not evaluated as a type of reservation. But you know that it is a vote bank policy, and we are living in a society where the satisfaction of the society, not the benefit of the society, satisfaction, propitiation of the society or propitiation of the allied parties or some heads in the society, that is the major requisite for the parties to sustain, to continue their power process, by which they have to unavoidably do that. But there are other ways, apart from reservation, conservation of their values and preservation of the values and development. More than reservation, conservation and preservation of their moral, economical. For example, you see, now lot of opportunities given for the people, those who are reserved now, they are economically prosperous. They are now economically, they have flourished. If you take an economical survey, if you take the social survey, they are now flourishing. So, equality in opportunities, treating them, reservation is no doubt required. It was required at the time of our independence, where those people, due to some casteism or the so-called hegemony that existed in the society, in political science it is known as hegemony, Jainism, racism, these things they existed in the society in pre-independence status, by which there was a compulsion that must give them a special intelligence for them to come out, not at the cost of the loss of lives of the other major people, but that is a time-oriented schedule. Just as a child that requires the supportive hand of the mother till it totters. Then it starts to have a majestic walk, then to run and ride on a horse. And still carrying the hand of the mother at the time of riding a horse is ridiculous and impracticable. That is what we are doing because of the inevitable support that is required for the power agencies to sustain their glory and continue their power support.
Sir, what is the importance of Shodasha Sanskar in rituals?
In political science?
No, in creating a good human being.
Okay. It is a philosophical, it is absolutely philosophical, not political philosophy, but still I will say. Samskara is refinement. Samyak karoti iti samskaraha. That is, boiling of water is there, where it is purified. See, unwanted thing is removed and an essential thing is incorporated. That is known as samskara. Samskara is a ritual by which what is disease, dis-ease, uncomfort, which is caused by either departure of an essential element or arrival of a foreign element. Likewise, samskara as the human system, the processing of the human ecology, physiology, psychology, epistemology and ontology, these spheres, they consist of an eternal combat between the essentials and non-essentials. It is Nitya Yuddha. In that, we need some external supports. Supports of mysticism, supports of mediation from the sources of knowledge and power, supports from spiritualized agents, support from intellectualized agents we required, and by which we eradicate the unwanted things inside and establish the wanted, supportive, nourishing elements inside. That is known as samskara. There are 16 samskaras starting from Jatakarma to Antyeshti. Each and every step, for example, Annaprashana, just you take a food and just you eat. It is a common process. Consumption of food is unibiological or omnibiological process, starting from amoeba till Brahma. Everybody used to eat some food. Maybe these people, they may be eating some mud, somebody eating food, somebody eating ambrosia, the nectar of devas. Whatever it may be, irrespective of the status, everybody define on food. But just eating food, just like the other species could eat, it is just very common. This samskara qualifies you, distinguishable from the other species, that you can also import. You can also import. There is one engineering or mechanism known as celestial mechanism or terrestrial mechanism. Through the process of terrestrial or celestial mechanism, through Annaprashana, apart from the nutrients that are apparently seen as per the science of dietetics and nutrition physics, you can also import inside jnana, shraddha, bhakti, vairagya, that can also be incorporated by a mantric or a mystic influence, by which the child is nourished with essential characters, becoming a prospective good citizen of the society and good cosmopolitan member of the globe as a whole. Yes. Starting from a good citizen, by starting from self-governance to global governance. Nice. You have to satisfy people. I told you have to satisfy people, otherwise you will be thrown out. Equality can be bought. Equality can be enhanced by means of equality of opportunities and equalities in development. Equalities in opportunities and development need not be reserved. It is not by a compulsory reservation. It is by making them fully qualified. That qualification, you see, that creates two things. One, insecurity in the unreserved, and some sort of perfunctory approach towards the society from the reserved people, as they are very much confined and conformed with their reservations, that creates some sort of prevaricatedness inside them. And the basic touchstone in the society, that is performance skill, dexterity, these things are not evaluated as a type of reservation. But you know that it is a vote bank policy, and we are living in a society where the satisfaction, where the satisfaction of the society, not the benefit of the society, satisfaction, propitiation of the society or propitiation of the allied parties or some heads in the society, that is the major requisite for the parties to sustain, to continue their power process, by which they have to unavoidably do that. But there are other ways, apart from reservation, conservation of their values and preservation of the values and development. More than reservation, conservation and preservation of their moral, economical. For example, you see, now lot of opportunities given for the people, those who are reserved now, they are economically prosperous. They are now economically, they have flourished. If you take an economical survey, if you take the social survey, they are now flourishing. So, equality in opportunities, treating them, reservation is no doubt required. It was required at the time of our independence, where those people, due to some casteism or the so-called hegemony that existed in the society, in political science it is known as hegemony, Jainism, racism, these things they existed in the society in pre-independence status, by which there was a compulsion that must give them a special intelligence for them to come out, not at the cost of the loss of lives of the other major people, but that is a time-oriented schedule. Just as a child that requires the supportive hand of the mother till it totters, then it starts to have a majestic walk, then to run and ride on a horse, and still carrying the hand of the mother at the time of riding a horse is ridiculous and impracticable. That is what we are doing because of the inevitable support that is required for the power agencies to sustain their glory and continue their power support.
Sir, what is the importance of Shodasha Sanskar in rituals?
In political science?
No,
Ah,
in creating a good human being.
okay. It is a philosophical, it is absolutely philosophical, not political philosophy, but still I will say. Samskara is refinement. Samyak karoti iti samskaraha. That is, boiling of water is there, where it is purified. See, unwanted thing is removed and an essential thing is incorporated. That is known as samskara. Samskara is a ritual by which what is disease? Dis-ease, uncomfort, which is caused by either departure of an essential element or arrival of a foreign element. Likewise, samskara as the human system, the processing of the human ecology, physiology, psychology, epistemology and ontology, these spheres, they consist of an eternal combat between the essentials and non-essentials. It is Nitya Yuddha. In that, we need some external supports. Supports of mysticism, supports of mediation from the sources of knowledge and power, supports from spiritualized agents, support from intellectualized agents we required, and by which we eradicate the unwanted things inside and establish the wanted, supportive, nourishing elements inside. That is known as samskara. There are 16 samskaras starting from Jatakarma to Antyeshti. Each and every step, for example, Annaprashana, just you take a food and just you eat. It is a common process. Consumption of food is unibiological or omnibiological process, starting from amoeba till Brahma. Everybody used to eat some food. Maybe these people, they may be eating some mud, somebody eating food, somebody eating ambrosia, the nectar of devas. Whatever it may be, irrespective of the status, everybody define on food. But just eating food, just like the other species could eat, it is just very common. The samskara qualifies you distinguishable from the other species, that you can also import. You can also import. There is one engineering or mechanism known as celestial mechanism or terrestrial mechanism. Through the process of terrestrial or celestial mechanism, through Annaprashana, apart from the nutrients that are apparently seen as per the science of dietetics and nutrition physics, you can also import inside jnana, shraddha, bhakti, vairagya, that can also be incorporated by a mantric or a mystic influence, by which the child is nourished with essential characters, becoming a prospective good citizen of the society and good cosmopolitan member of the globe as a whole. Yes. Starting from a good citizen, by starting from self-governance to global governance. Nice.